Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the True Life Experience with Travis Eaton. This is Travis Eaton, and I have the honor and privilege and just honored in general to have my one of my good friends, Joanna, on the podcast. She's my first person I've ever interviewing, and she was also the person too that like kind of planted this seed for me in terms of having a podcast. Joanna does a lot of things. She's a teacher. She's an amazing artist. Like I can't express this enough, and a wonderful coach, and just a wonderful human being. We're just going to be talking a little bit about tonight about her journey and just keeping this very fluid and just kind of exploring many different topics. But Joanna, I want to turn it over to you. Like, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, it's I'm so excited to be connecting with you, Travis. This is great. And it's beautiful in that a connecting thread with us, which I've shared with you already, but it's fun to share here, is how we both reflected to one another things that we saw in one another. Like, and I've totally forgot about this, but you shared with me that I said a while back, like, hey, do you have a podcast? Because you have a great
Mhm.
voice and just your persona, your character. And then here we are, right? And you did the same thing with me. You said, hey, do you have an Oracle deck? And I said, well, funny you should ask. I've been working on one. Or
Yeah,
it was still at the point where it was like, okay, this has got to happen,
for
and
sure.
the action steps for implementation weren't there yet. And now the steps have been taken. It's a product and you have it, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing to celebrate. So there's so much celebration in the field tonight, and I'm honored to be guest number one in
hmm
the seed of what's being planted here. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when we met, well, we haven't met like in person, which is the funniest thing because I was like telling my girlfriend this earlier. I'm just like, I never met her in person, but we've been going back and forth like a year. I posted up in the iPad group. I was just like, going through like a spiritual awakening, and you gave such wonderful advice, and you just like DM me, and we are kind of just talking, just stayed in touch. And your artwork too is, man, I still rave about it. Like I still rave out to everyone. Like it is just insanely awesome. Like what inspires you like to create this art?
oh, thank you. Wow. Okay. What inspires me to create this art? I'm thinking about the pieces that you have. You have the phoenix, I
Yep.
believe, and
hmm
you also have the dragon, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Well, so it's interesting. I mean, there's a long story with the phoenix. I'll give you the short version. Um, and then there's another nice story with the dragon, and it's great that we're talking because I love sharing these stories, and it's
For sure.
rare and precious to have opportunities to share the stories. So,
Yeah.
um, the phoenix, uh, what inspired me to create it? Well, this was back in 2014, so it's actually a red-tailed hawk turning into a phoenix. And we'd go into depth around the different layers of symbolism within that, in
hmm
the Emergence Oracle. But this was
hmm
back in 2014, and I was going through a lot of grief and change, and I was
For
going
sure.
through a Phoenix journey, right?
Yeah.
And what inspired me to create it was I got to this point where I realized that I was at choice with how I wanted to be in relationship with the discomfort that I was experiencing.
Yeah.
And I could see that it was my tendency was to just numb out from it and push it away and distract myself.
hmm
And something came in for me that was like, well, what if you didn't have to make this big fancy art piece, but what if you just gave yourself 10 minutes to channel this all this energy that you have in a constructive way, and we can just
For sure.
stop after 10 minutes, and then you can have, the bottle of wine or the Netflix or whatever you want to do. But it was like this bargaining that started to happen, and I thought to
Yeah.
myself, wow, like I can do anything for 10 minutes. Okay. But the thing was like this inner reconciliation that was happening. It was like this voice inside of me was saying, if you do this, you have to show up fully for it. You can't
hmm
half-ass 10 minutes. Like
Yeah.
really put your whole heart into it, right?
For sure.
And it's actually really beautiful because now I'm connecting this with a quote that's always stuck with me from Judith Hanson Lassiter. She
Yeah.
authored a book called Living Your Yoga. And I often reference this quote in relation to the Phoenix. And now, right in this moment, I'm putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
But so I made the decision to show up fully for 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's so much more that I could add to this, but from that decision to just show up fully and channel all of this within me into something that wanted to emerge,
Hmm.
uh, I thought it was going to be a red-tailed hawk. I didn't think it was going to be a phoenix. I thought it was going to be like the rehearsal for the phoenix that would come later, sort of thing, right?
For sure.
And then as I get into it, this is so fun. I love, oh my God, this is so much fun. I just want to like tell the story forever. You're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I get into it. 10 minutes passes and I'm like, wow, I actually want to keep going. This is so much
Yeah.
fun. Like I don't even need the Netflix or whatever. Not like this bad.
Hmm.
Not like there's anything wrong with that. But I'm like, I want to keep going with this. And then all of a sudden, I have all these beautiful, like vibrant colors. And I was working with
Hmm.
chalk, and chalk is like you can go so immediate. You don't have to wait for anything to dry. You can just go in there and get after it. And I'm like, yes, this is what I need right now. It's so good. And so there was this like hot magenta pink, like this kind of color.
For sure.
Yeah. And this hot magenta was like, wouldn't that be fun? And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a hawk. There's no hot pink on a hawk. What are you
Hmm.
talking about? And so then I started journaling about this because I'm like, this is wild. What's that? What's actually going on here? So I started journaling, and I got to go find the journal. But the journal was like, well, you could totally ruin it with the pink, but it could also be a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
you won't know unless you try, right? And so I'm like, okay, well, let me get out of my own like rigidity and have
Hmm.
some fun. And so then I added the magenta, and then the magenta was like, oh, let's add the neon green and let's add the turquoise. And all of a sudden, so it was like this beautiful blossoming open of just like, let me start with the bare minimum and just give my heart to it. And
Yeah.
then like just allowing myself to go all in with my heart. The heart was leading the way. So you ask
Hmm.
what inspires me, uh my heart and all that's within my heart, which is everything.
It's a lot of colors.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
that's
so much
awesome,
fun.
man. Yeah, I love what you're saying there. Like when you're in a, bad time and having like an outlet or something like that. And it's very interesting too. Have you always been into art, or is this been like in the last decade?
Okay, so this is it. I've been drawing and painting and journaling since I
Okay.
was very young. And I
Okay.
actually still have, it's right behind me. I have my journal from when I was 8 years old. And I made
Awesome.
this declaration when I was 8 of this is me in the future. And I illustrated myself in the future. And I said, I want to do so many things with my life that there's not space enough on the page to illustrate it all. So I'm
For
just going to
sure.
illustrate what I want to do the most. And so I have this like really sweet illustration that says this is me in the future painting, and it's from the perspective where you see like the artist's hand and the palette and all the colors on the palette, and she's outside and she's surrounded by animals.
Yeah.
And whenever I feel like I've lost my way, I'm so glad that I had a teacher that encouraged us to journal, and she gave us a nice like hardcover journal that has like kept up after all these years.
For
But the
sure.
important thing is, even though like this came so naturally to me, I fought against it for a few decades of my life. And
Yeah.
so the last maybe 8 years or so has been about reconciling that inner battle and just letting myself own what I really love to do and do it
Yeah.
in a way that's really from love and not for like performing or needing anything externally in order
Yeah.
to be validated, you know?
Yeah,
And I feel like
definitely.
that's what relates with coaching. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. What do you think kind of like took you off the path of like getting into art a little bit more?
What took me off the path? What do you mean by your question?
Because you said like you eventually found art, but like back when you were a child and like when you kind of were growing up, you kind of were just kind of getting off the path of it. And yeah, what do you think kind of like got you off the path to begin with?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was really on a path thanks to some wonderful mentors in my life. I was really on
Hmm.
this path of art. I had my high school art teacher said, "Hey, if you work really hard, if you work really hard, if you like really commit to developing a portfolio, I bet you could get your college education paid for." And as
Hmm.
soon as those words came in, this fire just lit up within me, and I was pouring myself into my art.
For sure.
And yeah, and but then when I got all the money and when I got into college, there was a lot in my unconscious and my subconscious that was like, you don't deserve this, you're not worthy of this, you're going to lose it, right? So
Yeah.
all of that stuff started coming up, and that's when I started collapsing inside of myself with my creativity. So it took a while to even realize that was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that inner critic was kind of just popping up of just not being worthy, basically. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is too good to be true. Fear of losing it.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, then of course it might also probably like take some of the fun out of it too. I mean, when you're doing it for like such an external source, and like from what you said right there, it seems like everything you're doing right now, it's play. It's flat out just play, and you're actually getting really rewarded for it, but you're doing it just because it's coming from a sense of, we talk about the levels of energy, like level 6, basically, just joy. Like you're just doing you, homie, and people are loving it.
Yeah. And I've
Hmm.
I've really been like I've really been tracking this in my nervous system over the last few years, Travis, and
Yeah,
like reconditioning who I really am back into my body.
for
Like,
sure.
so when I started my art business after I got out of school and blah blah, this was 2010. It was very much like extrinsically motivated and all about like how do I make money, and thinking that the only way I could do that was by I had to be suffering, and if I wasn't like physically aching, then I wasn't working hard enough, right? Like that kind of
Yeah.
yeah. So like, and I feel like my journey, it just mirrors the journey of so many, right?
Yeah.
But it's really like the joy has been like, oh, I like committing to it and
Mhm.
tracking it and like allowing more of it. It's really been like this beautiful embodiment practice that I feel like it has no limit to its potential.
Yeah. I mean, you're just embodying you. You're just doing you, like flat out. So I'm really curious. So you're an artist originally. What got you into IPEC and coaching and everything?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's such a sweet question. Let's see. Well, I was working for this fantastic community foundation,
Hmm.
um, and had this great position where I was working with nonprofit emerging leaders,
Okay.
and they hired me as an administrative assistant, and I didn't think that there would be any sort of pathway to progress in the position, and it
For sure.
actually opened up into more of a program coordinator leadership type position. So I was running this program,
Hmm.
and I wanted to resource myself and be the best leader that I could be.
For
And
sure.
I also had a really good friend at the time who had gone through IPEC, and she had such a great experience with it that she really encouraged me to go through the program. So I went to IPAC through this very narrow lens of like, how can I be the best in this position? And I was so rigid to open myself up to anything beyond
Oh,
that.
wow. That's a program
Yeah.
too that really makes you unrigid real fast.
Right. Yeah. 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 Oh, it was just phenomenal though. Yeah.
Mhm.
And what brought you to IPAC?
So I got in the military in 2018, and in the military I was working on my degree in psychology. I'm fascinated by human behavior, like absolutely fascinated. Like we built this, like and what animal around the planet has built things like this, like skyscrapers, societies. Like it's fascinating to me, human behavior, it really is. And also thinking to like from my time in military, like with like veterans dealing with PTSD, like I want to know more about that. I want to know about some of the like the trauma that like my family went through and how it showed up in me and so much. So I was and I still am just a psychology nerd, like flat out. I finished my bachelor's, and afterwards, like it was like, okay, cool, like I got my bachelor's degree now, but they only teach you like basically the what, basically they don't teach you the how. So I wanted to like learn more about like coaching, like how do I actively coach people? Like I was in the personal development field for a long time. I've had coaches, I've had mentors, and I've also seen a lot of people in that field. I don't know. It's like they go up and then they just go back down. They go up, then they go back down. So I was like really interested in, not only like the energy kind of side where IPEC was talking about, because that's just fascinating studies and research. But I was also like really interested, like, hey, what can I do to help people create, lasting satisfaction in their life? And how can I also, do that for myself and, other people? So yeah, that's what got me an IPEC. And still to this day, it's mind blowing. Some of the things I continue to learn from that, just organization and the community. The community is just awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. The connections, the community, people are so open to sharing feedback and riffing. I love that it's such it's like this beautiful, almost like a petri dish for just testing out ideas, getting all these
Mhm.
different insights and perspectives. And Bruce Snyder's amazing. I have his signature like right up there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's badass,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I have of course, when you go through the program, you have your own coach, everything. When I got out of the program, I didn't have a coach. And, I was also kind of going through kind of like a breakup at time. I'm just like, I'm lost. And I was just starting to realize, like, oh, I need a coach again. I need someone to bitch to, basically. So I also have my own iPad coach too, and yeah, just having like that type of energy in my life is just absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So I'm really curious too. So you have this Oracle deck that came out. This took like almost right here a decade to make. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, so 12 years plus one of the images I actually made when I was 17. So we could say it's almost 2 decades.
Which image?
The skull.
The skull. Oh, I
Yeah.
pulled that card the other day. I was just like, dude, this is a cool
Oh,
thing.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah, when I first met you, I was just like, you're an oracle. Like you're flat out. You have this oracle type of just personality about you. I'm just like, and I know how like kind of like spiritual you are too on the side. I'm just like, girl, like you're flat out, you're an oracle. Like I'm glad you made this deck.
Wow, that's such a beautiful compliment. My goodness, Travis. Wow, that's
Yeah,
a high honor. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. So I'm really
Yeah.
curious, like, what's
Mm.
next for you after this? Since this took like a long time to make.
Yeah, well, it's quite fascinating to live into something that's titled Emergence. It feels
Hmm.
as though um this product, this co-creation has it's a seed, it's an acorn. It's just the beginning.
For sure.
And and there's an entire curriculum that's inside of it and so
Hmm.
much more that I don't know. There's
Yeah,
so much more that I don't know is in there, and that's what's so fun. Um, However, what I do know is that the intention that I brought to it is one that I want to continue exploring and cultivating, and this is where I'm really excited, and actually, the excitement that I have, uh we'll re-listen to this conversation in 6 to 9 months and it's going to make a lot more
hmm,
sense, but this is driving the next thing.
for
And what
sure.
it is the intention that I brought to this creation was the creation was an external reflection of something that I was cultivating inside of myself.
Yeah.
So to bring an intention of I want to create myself through creative expression. Uh, right. It's so exciting to me because I see how much my own self-image has evolved since
For
the
sure.
time that I like first was really like back in the spring, like, okay, I'm actually going to commit to this. And my initial thought, Travis, for
Hmm.
this, I'll share it with you, was like, it was coming from this energy of, gosh, I just like this oracle won't go away and I have to do that. It was just something that I had to do, to get to the next thing. That was the energy
For
that I was
sure.
bringing in. And so I'm like, I was like kind of rolling my eyes and like thinking, maybe I'll just go through the motions and print out some copies at Staples and stuff them in bags and give them to friends, and then I'll be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I allowed myself to really surrender to the potential that this container held to transform me
Yeah.
and my self-image, and as I realized that, well, if I want to cultivate, I believe in myself, I love myself, I am worthy, I am deserving,
Mm-hmm.
then the product's going to reflect that. So it really challenged me in so many ways that I couldn't have expected or anticipated. But the final product, like, I'm so in love with it. It's so beautiful. And it's so much
Mm-hmm.
more than I ever could have imagined at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited to continue like that fractal pattern of like, okay, this is something I will, like, a year ago, I didn't even believe in myself. I wasn't even aware that I didn't believe in myself until someone said, "Do you believe in yourself?" And I said, "I have a responsibility to." And they said, "That's not what I
Sure.
asked." That's not what I asked.
That's an interesting response. You have the
Yeah.
responsibility to. That is very interesting to say.
Yeah. It was like I was bypassing this part of myself that I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
even aware of until this person just straight out was like, and it was a coach. And he was like, "Well, I believe in you. And it's not because you're paying me. Like, I really believe in you." And I thought, gosh, that's what I have to get into my subconscious. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, like coming up with a project that's going to transform me from the inside out. Could there be anything better?
No, you're right. And I think the title is very fitting, like Emergence. It sounds like you are emerging from this. Getting that
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Thank you for that reflection, Travis. It's wild and it's beautiful. And it's what's so gratifying too is hearing from people and receiving photos and images, and
Hmm.
so, and especially I'm hearing from so many women who are pulling the lioness card. She
Yeah.
keeps showing up. It's really, there's something quite magical about all of this that is so
Yeah.
mysterious, and it's so much fun to talk about with people like you. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here.
No, that's super cool, man. And yeah, I love what your kind of coach was saying there too. It's just like, do you believe in yourself?
Right.
I it's always good to have like your coach or just someone in your life to kind of reflect that back at you. I realize like I hold a ton of self-criticism and it kind of pops up in many different ways. And then my girlfriend popped up in my life too. And since we started living with each other, like she knows when I'm like criticizing myself in my head, and she's like, "Babe, stop. You're doing the best that you can." And the more and more she did that, the more and more that energy is kind of reflecting back on me. So my own inner critic is kind of like like switching the dial basically. There's been many times where I'm like working or something where I just kind of like beat myself up, like, man, fuck, I should have got that right. And I'm just like, there's just like a voice that kind of pops up that kind of says, like, no, like you're doing the best that you can. Because we are all just doing the best that we can. So
Yeah.
it's wonderful just to have that kind of reflected at you and be like, oh, like, hey, there's some work here. There's a little bit of work, and it's yeah, it's something I want to kind of like work on. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really, you're making me think of how we're the sum of the five people we spend the most time with, right? And
Mm-hmm.
just how life affirming it can be when we really curate our lives in such a way that the reflections that we're receiving are in service of our soul's emergence. Truly,
Yeah.
it it's just so beautiful that your partner is able to be that believing mirror for you, and yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. That too, and like, I'm curious if you've ever thought about it this way. Someone recently shared, we're not just the sum of the five people, but we're the sum of the five nervous systems that we spend the most time.
I love that.
Wow, yeah. Yeah.
That's very true. That's
Yeah.
an interesting take too. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of course, like energy attracts energy. Nervous systems attract nervous systems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Definitely. What got you into spirituality and everything?
Defining spiritual. Why am I laughing? Yeah. Um, well, I mean, this has been an evolving journey.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the spiritual language made me really uncomfortable for a really long time.
Yeah,
Even a lot of the language in this oracle, um, I had so much discomfort around, and
for sure.
I did a lot of work actually around this with a modality called family constellations,
Yeah,
and some fantastic practitioners there. But all of this, and I would be so curious to hear your response, Travis, to this, but
hmm,
I feel like the journey that I'm on is really just coming back home to myself. And
yeah.
to me, that is what I would define um as well, actually, like, how are we defining spirituality here?
That's a very interesting question, and that's one thing. Like, I'll be honest, like this past year has been spiritually pretty tough for me. I've seen a lot of close friends. They're just not my friends anymore that did a lot of things that are kind of ethically weird for me and then kind of bypass it spiritually. So I have also done the same kind of journey where it's just like, hey, like some of the spiritual shit I'm comfortable with, but there's some where I'm just like, yeah, dude, I totally get it. So I'm kind of like on a journey right now of like defining, hey, what does spirituality mean for me? I think what it means in general, I think spirituality means more about purpose, basically. When I think about religion, like people who are in a religion, their purpose is for, God, for Jesus, for Muhammad, whatever. Um, and I think spirituality it's very wide open, but it's just still the same. It's more just like, what is your purpose? And I think for a lot of us, our purpose is, finding ourself. That's a big purpose in itself because as human beings, we're super complicated people. And I think also like we're wired to be of service to some way, shape, or form, to something bigger than ourselves. So finding those two things, find yourself and finding something to, be of service of, even if it's a dog, like it's so important to have in your life.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love how you're bringing in service and
Mhm.
contribution and something beyond the self
Yeah.
as almost like baked into how you define what this is. But that word
Yeah.
service really resonates with me deeply. And I think for a long time I had a tendency to want to like contribute with thinking that Joanna didn't need to be included in it, right? And then actually it was so interesting with this oracle. I faced so much resistance because I wasn't able to connect at the time when I first started out. How does this serve a purpose?
Yeah.
The question was so beyond me.
Hmm.
And I to put myself in someone else's shoes, it was like I was getting so neurotic about it because I was like, it just wasn't making, the pieces weren't yet fitting. But
Yeah.
as I let it be just something that I could do to cultivate self-love, and I believe in you, and let that be enough,
Yeah.
and let it be as small and humble as it needed to be. Like, it really would have been okay if these were like, 10 copies and bags at Staples given to friends. That would have been okay.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it just like naturally, it's so interesting. Like, it brought me so much deeper, Travis, into how like the inner is a reflection of the outer, and the outer is a reflection of the inner, and we all are so intimately connected. And if
Yeah.
I've been on this journey with these cards, other people's journeys are going to be reflected back in them, no doubt about it. But I
Yeah.
couldn't see that at the time.
Of course, because you're in a very what it sound like doing type of mind. Am I getting that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, of course it's
yeah.
understandable. Like,
Yeah, right. And my mind wanted to know, how does this serve a purpose? Let's
yeah.
define it. It wanted to define it before it was definable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that might be where other people sometimes get stuck too from taking that next step, is like
Yeah.
needing to have the whole map or the whole strategic plan. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And it's also a very human being thing too. A lot of things we do, it's around like the fear of the unknown. I mean, that's a fear of death, basically. And that can be translated to many different things. Like, and that's hard energy to kind of take on and kind of jump in. But what I like about you is, from what I saw, it's like it's play. Like play. You're just playing, bro. Like, and that's the essence of life. Like, we're all just playing in this big game of society and money. We're all just playing in this big game of this, being in this big blue globe and this universe, and it's just play. Like that's why we're here, play and figure things out. I know for myself, like that's a really difficult thing to kind of like, figure out too, because there's also just like, well, I want to play right. Like,
Yeah.
but it's just like,
Right.
but our version of right and wrong, it changes so much. So that's a very subjective term too. So I
Yeah.
think it's just more just like listening to yourself and like, where do you want, how do you want to play right now?
Right. And could I trust, or could I play with the idea of trusting that there's
Mm-hmm.
actually no wrong decision? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because everything is inevitably going to take me on some sort of journey, some sort of experience that's going to eventually bring me back into the flow of what naturally wants to emerge. Like, could I play
Yeah.
with trusting that? Right?
Yeah.
Like Sue Morter, Energy Codes, she says, you can't do it wrong. You can only do it long, which I really like. I'm like, oh yeah, you can't do it wrong. Like you can't mess this
Mm-hmm.
up. And I feel like that's so hard for the logical mind to wrap its brain around. Like, what are you talking about? I can't mess this up. No, it's gotta be like, uh,
Yeah. Yeah. One IPEC principle that always kicks my ass is you cannot make a mistake. Like
oh,
there are no mistakes. And
mm,
I'm just like,
yeah,
logically, like being a coach, like I know what that I know from what my version of that means, where it's just like, there are no mistakes because you have the perception that you have right now. And back then when you quote unquote made a mistake, like you had the perception that you had right now. Like we're all just built to survive and, do our thing in this world. So of course you quote unquote made that mistake back then
mm,
because you had the perception you did right now or you had back then. Um, but there's so many layers to that. Like
yeah,
there's so many layers of, you can't make a mistake. Like, because you really can't. But once again, the ego, the thinking mind, whatever you want to call it, it's like it's hard to take that in sometimes. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I feel like a word that keeps coming in, and I feel like this is something that you do really well with your clients.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about like how do we define spirituality? Well, so much of this is mindfulness and awareness of
Yeah.
choice, awareness of the stories that are playing out. And you as a
Mm-hmm.
coach, you bring people uh or you guide people
Mm-hmm.
into a journey of what are the different stories that are playing out consciously and
Yeah.
subconsciously. You used that language earlier.
Yeah, no, definitely. One of my testimonials for my clients too, like I still laugh at this, but he'll sit in his car, he's just talking about like all my coaching. It's like Travis didn't even like tell me anything. He just asked questions and it was mind blowing. Like, and you're right, like that's exactly what I kind of do. Like we're figuring things out like between me and you, and we're just like we're going with it. And it's so funny once you start unraveling the layers and unraveling the layers and kind of shifting things, it was like, whoa, like awareness is a powerful thing. Like
Yeah.
it is a very powerful thing. And there's so many, as you grow older, as you go to different places, I realized myself too, when I got into this relationship, like I was really unaware of how like I wasn't bringing up certain things. Like my girlfriend would be like, let's hang out tonight. And I'll be like, oh, I need to work right now. But I'd be kind of like people pleasing in a way. I'd be like, yeah, sure, babe, we can hang out for a little bit. And I wasn't aware of that. And it would start to reflect over our relationship a little bit. And it's so funny too when you get into different relationships. Like I'm good like that with my friends, where my friends are just like, "Hey, let's hang out." And I'm just like, "No, bro, I can't right now." But you get into a new relationship, it's like, "Oh, it's a whole nother layer." So it's really fascinating, really fascinating. There's so many layers of awareness.
Yeah, God, and you're bringing me into compassion too. Like, how can I hold compassion for the part of me that's like maybe really frustrated with the part
Mhm.
that's experiencing this, and then compassion for the other person. There's so many, and then like I know for me sometimes I'll be really hard on myself if I'm not doing a good enough job of being compassionate.
I know the exact fucking same. And
Yeah,
yeah, that's definitely something I'm working on too, where it's like, man, I'm beating myself up for not being basically a coach. Like,
right.
and it's just
Yeah.
like, you can't be like that for everyone. Like, you're still a human being. You still, you have an ego. Everyone has an ego. And I think the ego is not my identity, basically. And you identify as this, these are your values, these are your principles, and sometimes other people will identify it the same way, and it can kind of rub you the wrong way, And of course you should, also, I don't want to say should. I've been saying should a lot, where I'm shooting on myself a lot. Like, of course you do want to try to understand the other side, but be aware, like, hey, this is your side of things too. So have your boundaries and understand, like, these are my values, these are my boundaries, these are people I want in my life, these are people I don't. And it's really powerful when you kind of like get out of the car that is you and your ego and kind of be like, actually, I really like this car. Let's continue to do things with it. Like, let's establish what are our boundaries. Let's establish what are our values and so much more. I think a lot of
Mm,
things of spirituality, like it's kind of just like trying to kill the ego. Like I'm just don't
right.
get wrong. The ego could be very, it can be really terrible when it's, let loose or not conscious. I think when you're not able to separate yourself from your ego, but you're always gonna have it. Like no matter how many fucking mushrooms you take.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely.
Well, you're bringing me to like an edge that I'm realizing within myself is when when things come up, right? When the
Hmm.
stories come up, when the triggers come up, and when I see the old stories there, right?
Yeah.
Awareness, seeing that is there. And I'm working with this fantastic, like somatic. She's really into astrology too, which is interesting, like
Cool.
body-based astrology coaching. Like, wow, this is great.
Cool.
I like where this is going. But we're really playing with this idea of when the stuff comes up, can I just let it be and really, really just be with it, as opposed to like my
Yeah.
tendency is like, This is not okay. This is not okay. This is not okay. I got to do something.
Yeah.
I got to fix it." It's like, no.
Yeah.
But it's also not looking away either and pretending that it never, you know what I mean? So it's like
Of course.
learning to just be, in that place of witnessing. And then like that's where art as an integrative practice can be
Mhm.
so again, integration, that's the word. It's integrative, but it's such a beautiful point that you're bringing in here, Travis, around
Mhm.
how can we really, when the stuff comes up, how how do we want to be in relationship with it, and how can we love
Yeah.
ourselves, and how can we trust that the other person like is gonna be there,
Mhm.
and it's all gonna work out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a big leap of faith, and every
Yeah.
time we take the leap, we learn, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's why I love, all the work around, IPEC. It's not trying to like with IPEC, it's not trying to be positive or negative or good or bad. It's just like
Right.
it's trying to be a conscious choice. And I feel like that's what we all need. It's okay to be a conscious choice of your anger. It's okay to be a conscious choice of your, victimhood and
Yeah.
everything. It's just, being of conscious choice. And, sometimes, well, a lot of times probably we're not a conscious choice of our, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions. And the way to do that is sitting with it when it pops up and, questioning it and being there with it, loving it,
Mm,
choosing what to do with it. Like it's okay to feel conflict. It's okay to feel anger. That's one thing that I've
yeah.
also had to like kind of take on my own journey too, where, anger will pop up and I'll be like, no, 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 let's think about this in a different way, maybe like a level 5 way or something. And be like, no, bro, like you're angry. Sit with it. Like it's okay. Like, and it's okay to, engage with it consciously, like choose it. If you want to, this is a portal and you can walk through it if you want. So I think
Yeah.
it's a really powerful thing there.
Yeah. I have questions about this.
Mm-hmm.
Are you
No, go
open
for
to?
it. Go for it.
Yeah, like, so how do you meet your anger? Could you kind of walk me through what what it looks like, or how you work with it?
One thing I realize is with myself, I bottle up my anger a lot. And it's really of, once again, of trying to be of service. Like I had a friend group where my last roommates where I'm just like, they're like having like events at the house. And it's like, I really don't want to event the house right now, but to help you build your business. So I'm like, I'll level 3 it. And of course, the more and more you level 3 things, it's just like, oh, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
So that's definitely one thing I lost track of. I think in the military, there was a lot of times where my anger got the best of me, and I realized like, oh, this is not like screaming and yelling. It's simply not. So it's just like that got me into questioning, like, what is leadership? Like, well, for me, leadership is being firm in your values. Like that back then, that's what one thing was. And it was like two things. You have the mission, you got the people. So it's just like, what do you want to do with this? And I think right now in my life too, I got into the point where I'm still working on this too, where I'm okay sitting with my anger and understanding it. I'm also, if you've ever taken a Myers-Briggs, like I'm an ENFP. One of my functions too is just like my second function is introverted feelings. I really don't know my feelings until I'm by myself, to be honest. Like until something happens and I'm like kind of thinking about it, I'm just like, yeah, actually, the thing that happened yesterday did kind of piss me off. And then it's like, okay, what do I want to choose to do with it? Do I want to kind of sit in it? Do I kind of want to have that inner dialogue myself? Or do I want to actively just discuss it? And it's okay to actively discuss it. I do this with my mom too. Like, I'm just like, hey, mom, like, I really didn't like what you did yesterday, and here's the reason why. Or I feel like, I feel kind of angry about that because of X, Y, and Z. And just in saying the word feeling rather than, I am angry, because you're not angry, like you're a human being, you're a lot more than just anger. But saying that you feel that way, that kind of disassociates, I don't want to say disassociates, but kind of separates you from the feeling. So you can be like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. And I'm not that feeling. I'm a lot more than that feeling. That's been the journey for me, really. And it's always an ever ending journey. Like I feel like anger is one of those things too, where it just sneaks up on you. It sneaks up on you real fast. Like there's a dude that cut me off today. I'm just like, this bam. It's you got your automatic brain that just sometimes has those kind of same things. So just being aware of that, I feel like just understanding like how do I want to deal with it. Like and awareness is always the first key, really.
That's it. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad that you're putting this pod out, is because it illumines awareness. It awakens awareness. It reflects, it invites
Yeah.
awareness. And can I share something with you quick that's related to this?
Go for it. Yeah.
You're reminding me of this really interesting exercise that came in. I took a it was called nervous system mastery. I took this
Cool.
back in November, and it was also right at the time when things with the Oracle were really like blah blah blah. So there's more in the course that I'm going to go back to and revisit again.
For
But
sure.
there was this one exercise that was provided where we were asked to like sit with and be with and witness and create a container around it, the emotions that we find most difficult. And it didn't even occur to me that if for me, like anger is something that I'm like tend to be really averse to, like conflict,
Sure.
whoo. But it was presented in how for some people it's actually elevated emotions like joy. These people can be really, and for me, I was like, wow, that's so different from my paradigm because I live so much in it. But I didn't realize that a lot of people are afraid to really allow themselves to go into that high of a high because of the fear of losing it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes total sense. But the exercise was essentially like you create a safe container, you get really present, and then you just kind of recall a memory that elicits that emotion. And then you go inside your body and you notice what you're feeling in your body.
For
And you
sure.
just breathe and you let that emotion, you just ride it out. And what happened in my body was so profound. You're reminding me that I want to go back and like do more of this. It's phenomenal to me what can happen just in that presence and that witnessing and the being with it, as opposed to avoiding it or judging it or shaming it. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The body holds a lot of things in it. I did a
Yeah.
breathwork session over the weekend and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sometimes I'm a very mind orientated person and my girlfriend, she's a very body orientated person. So it's like perfect yin yang there. But still to this day, like it's really fascinating how much energy can just be kind of trapped in the body and just it
Yeah.
can pop up too in the most bizarre ways sometimes. So yeah, it's really fascinating.
Mm, mm,
Yeah.
I love that you're plugging breath work too. That's been another incredibly integrative practice for me,
Yeah.
especially over the last few years, is really like getting to the root of a lot of the trauma and all that, right? The breath
Yeah.
work has been so facilitative of allowing that emotional release and
Yeah.
allowing the movement of energy in the body.
Yeah, definitely. Well,
Yeah.
Joanna, we got a few minutes left here. Do you
Oh my
have a
gosh.
deck by you, like one of your Oracle decks?
I do. I
I
do. I
would love
do.
for you to do a reading for me if you're open to that.
Oh my goodness. I would be so honored, my friend. What would we like to explore? What's an intention or
I
question
think my
for you?
intention is just
Hmm.
how can I be of service this year? That's one thing I've been kind of reflecting on. Basically, you always have an intention of every year, and this past year, it was very difficult for me, and yeah, I did my best to, build up my own business and continue to keep going on with that. But I really kind of there's a lot of projects in my head, basically, of helping veterans, of this podcast, and a lot more other things too. And I want to figure out like, hey, what's the big domino to push over? Um, they kind of like knocked over many of your dominoes, and that big domino, like what is that thing I can do to be of service to other people? So one thing I really want to explore.
I feel like you already know the answer to your question.
Oh, don't we all? Don't we all?
Let's see what the oracle might want to mirror back to you.
Okay.
Oh, the lions keep coming in, Travis. It's
They
no
do,
joke.
man.
We're
They
gonna do three
do.
cards. Do we have time for three
Yeah,
cards?
we got time for 3 cards. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to see. Oh my God, this is wild.
I never
Okay,
got the Pegasus before.
okay, this is phenomenal. What? Okay, this is really bizarre. All of these cards were in the 2023 reading that I did on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay.
The
So we have the lion, we have Pegasus, and we have the ladybug.
ladybug.
And you can
Cool.
actually just go on my YouTube and like go listen to it. But
Yeah.
when it comes to service and contribution, oh my God, this is so beautiful. Right? So the lion, courage, right? You know the
Mhm.
root of the word courage, it's from the French core heart, right?
Yeah.
So it's really, this is about you tapping into that deep desire that you have. You have this deep desire to create, and we want to take this fire inside of you, and and you want to direct it, right? And that's what you're
For
asking. You're
sure.
like, how do I want to direct this energy, right? And then Pegasus, he's grounded. He can get so much accomplished too, and he's fast as anything. And he's also connected with the ether. He's connected with the divine. So Pegasus is like, it's almost like Lion is saying, like, you have that strength and power and that will. You have that fire within you. It's already there. And Pegasus is like allow the information to come through. You don't have to, kind of like we were saying at the beginning, we don't have to have the whole path laid out, but just
Mhm.
taking the next step and the next step. And it's like, yeah, but how do I like come up with a plan with this? Pegasus is like, have some fun with this. He's all about inspiration. So what inspires you the most? It's like follow your highest excitement kind of thing.
Yeah.
Excitement's a language of the soul, right?
Mhm.
And then with the ladybug, I mean, you're blessed. There's no way you can get this wrong. But
Mhm.
interestingly, and it doesn't say this in the oracle, but I had some connections with ancestors just recently with the
For sure.
ladybug. So I feel like this is also about ancestral support.
Yeah.
And you mentioned family earlier, so
Yeah.
there's something about that here.
Cool.
Um, but so follow your highest excitement, channel that like lion energy that you have in it's the dance, right? It's the dance
Yeah.
of like action and like playing with. Okay. So maybe another question that you could ask is, how do I want to be in relationship with all these projects? Right?
Yeah. That is a good question. That is a good question. I'm gonna write that down right now.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
Jonah, this has been awesome. Bro,
Can
this has
we
been
please
really
do this
cool.
again?
Oh, definitely.
Oh
How
my
can
gosh, please.
people find you?
They can find me on joannaread.com or emergenceoracle.com or Joanna E. Read on Instagram, like Kermit E. Frog, but Joanna
Mhm.
E. Read. And it's read like a book, READ, like a fine leather-bound novel. And I'll be authoring many of them this year and years beyond. So I'll be living into my last name. Uh, Joanna Read, Joanna Wright. Anyways, yeah, please let's do this again. I'm so
Yeah,
excited for so much that is
yeah.
emerging within you and within me and within the collective.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I
Um,
appreciate you. If you guys are watching on
yes.
YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.